After over a decade, the wait for Pikmin 4 is finally nearly over. And if you're anything like me, one of the most exciting parts about Pikmin 4 finally being here are the brand new Pikmin types. All 2 of them. Yeah, as much as I love Ice and Glow Pikmin, only getting 2 is slightly painful. It's just that the wait has been so long and there's been so many fan concepts that only 2 is just, it seems small. And it makes me wonder what other Pikmin types could we have gotten, or even what other types could we get in the future in Pikmin 5 in another 10 years. But thankfully, when thinking of new types, you're not shooting completely in the dark, as there's concept art of over half a dozen Pikmin types that have never seen the light of day, or night, I guess. And so I want to ask, why were these Pikmin types cut in the past, and could we ever see them in a real game sometime in the future? Now for a bit of backstory, in 2014 Nintendo held a seminar all about game creation, and as part of that, they gave away a lot of souvenirs. One of those souvenirs was a notebook full of concept art, and one of those pages contained a bunch of Pikmin concepts for Pikmin 3. Now some of these are things we've seen before, like Rock Pikmin, Winged Pikmin back when they were still orange, and even a small little Bulbman doodle, but everything else is completely new. These guys are going to be what I'm talking about today. And since these are pretty obviously still very early conceptual ideas, I took it upon myself to recreate them in my own style just to have a more complete grasp of what they look like. And I did take a couple artistic liberties when it comes to coloring, for example. But that's enough preamble. Let's just jump in and start with this big, hairy Pikmin. Now, a lot of these have some text which I'll roughly translate. For these guys, it says that they are large, they're strong, and it's harder to grow them, as what would normally grow 10 Pikmin will only grow 1 of them. It also says they're really good at construction. The only thing I think this could mean is in Pikmin 1 and 2, there was those ramps and bridges you could build out of twigs. So maybe they'd be faster at building those, back before they were potentially scrapped for 3, but who knows. Now I think the most obvious thing about these is their resemblance to purple Pikmin, which is pretty much what they are. They're bigger, they're stronger, they have a 10-to-1 ratio compared to other Pikmin. It just seems to me that these are an attempt at rebalancing purple Pikmin, considering how overpowered they were in 2, which is probably why they were cut and why we'll never see them again. As why have a cheap purple Pikmin knockoff when we just have purple Pikmin? And just like how purple Pikmin were the big counterpart of the tiny white Pikmin, these hairy guys also have a small counterpart in these small pinkish Pikmin. Besides their small size and lack of arms, we also know a few more things about them. For one, they're able to stick to walls, which allows them to walk off edges that other Pikmin wouldn't. On top of this, they're also much easier to propagate. I assume this is the exact opposite of the hairy one, where what would normally create 1 Pikmin would create 10 of these guys, but it balances out because they're also much weaker and they can't even latch onto enemies. Now for one, it still sounds like it's a ripoff of White Pikmin, but also, I think they weren't scrapped entirely. Instead, I think they were merged with the Winged Pikmin. On this very page, we see that the original idea for Winged Pikmin was that they would just be able to hop over ledges, which hopping over ledges and climbing over edges is basically the same thing, except flying is a much more versatile concept than simply just sticking to walls. So to me, it seems very obvious that these 2 were fused. The Winged Pikmin kept their wings, but they adopted the pink coloring and tiny body of the tiny Pikmin. And it's not the only Pikmin that I think was eventually merged with other types. Take this Shell Pikmin. All that's said about is that it has a hard carapace, which just means shell, but just looking at it, you can already kind of grasp what abilities it would have. Since it has a hard head, when it gets crushed, it'd probably just be pushed into the ground, and because of it, when you throw it at an enemy, it'd probably do extra damage and potentially even break glass walls. But because of its stubby little arms, it probably can't latch on like other types. If any of this sounds familiar, it's because that's what Rock Pikmin turned out to be. But instead of just having a hard head, they have a hard everything. Again, it's just a more versatile concept than what the Shell Pikmin originally had. And it doesn't end here either, just look at this Fuzzy Pikmin. All that's written about it is that it has adapted to cold climates. Whether intentional or not, I think these guys eventually merged into Ice Pikmin. How can you be more adapt to the cold than by literally adapting to be cold? Now, this one may just be a coincidence, but still, Ice Pikmin take the role that these guys would have had. But what's a much more obvious connection are these ghost Pikmin, with ghostly tails and glow in the dark. And we even see what appears to be them following a captain at night, or at least in some kind of darkness. Now if a glowing ghost Pikmin in the dark sounds at all familiar, that's exactly what glow Pikmin are going to be. Even the design is very similar with the weird eyes and the tail. The only difference is that they went from orange to green. Ironically, makes it the second orange Pikmin to be changed in its final incarnation. This also applies to this guy, this big Bulbear Bulbmin. It's much bigger than a normal Bulbmin, and it can even carry Pikmin over water. Again, if this sounds familiar, this Bulbear Bulbmin is likely the original idea that eventually grew up to be Oatchi. And the connection between Oatchi and Parasite Pikmin isn't even gone in Pikmin 4 either, as Olimar's dog Moss still has a Pikmin sprout for a tail. So out of all this page, a lot of what we've seen here has come to light in real Pikmin, just in different forms. But there are two that I think are the biggest contenders for potentially coming back in future games. First, let's talk about this long, thin bean Pikmin, which actually has some of the most written about it than any others. Unfortunately, what is said about it is kinda confusing. Firstly, it says they're able to connect them to form a bridge. To me, that just sounds like Olimar's Up special from Super Smash Bros. Brawl, which the idea of temporary bridges being made out of Pikmin is an interesting concept, and one we've technically seen in the form of Winged Pikmin exclusive gates, and Ice Pikmin being able to freeze water, but I don't really see how it could be exclusive to one type. That just seems like a general ability. Maybe since they're longer, they're more efficient, but I don't really know. And the next one is just farming. I have no clue what farming could have to do with this. Maybe in early development of Pikmin 3, you were able to grow fruits? Maybe this has something to do with the Bluminous Stemples? Again, I have no clue what this means, but it's the last trait that is the most interesting. It's that they're parasitic. Potentially, this is the true form of the Pikmin that creates Bulbmin, as when Bulbmin are buried or idle, you see that their sprout actually glows green, so maybe there's a connection. How this would actually function in-game is kinda hard to imagine. Maybe whenever they're eaten, they have a chance to turn that enemy into a controllable ally, but I can already imagine the problems with that. For one, that means every enemy would need a Pikmin state for you to control them, which seems a little too overpowered and game-defining, as Mario Odyssey has that exact concept and it's the entire basis of it. That's not something you just throw in as a side option. And ultimately, I think that's why this never got into the game, as its three listed abilities are kind of really random and don't have any synergy with them. And as much as I love its design, it's very dumb and goofy. I don't really see it coming back anytime soon, unless it gets a big redesign. And that leaves us with one, and it is, in my opinion, the single most likely idea for a new Pikmin type, and my first contender for a type in Pikmin 5, and that is the Slime Pikmin. Now, all that's said about it is that it's slow, presumably like purple Pikmin, and that it can repair bridges using mucus. Now, in Pikmin 3 and now 4, repairing bridges is just as easy as putting the pieces together, so that wouldn't really come to work. But the idea of a mucusy, slimy Pikmin is something that I really like. Maybe they can climb up walls and stick to enemies and they're harder to shake off. Maybe they can go through grating to go through walls and floors to meet up with other captains that other Pikmin just can't get through. Maybe they still can repair things by using slime to stick them all together. Or maybe lay down slime traps to get enemies stuck. Maybe they can be immune to slime hazards, whatever that would be. The idea of a slimy, non-solid Pikmin is a really interesting idea. And if any of these Pikmin I've talked about today were to be in a full game, I fully believe it should be this one. But at the end of the day, if any of these were to make it into a future Pikmin game in any form, I'd love to see it. Even as very early concept art, these all still hold the special magic that all Pikmin designs share, and I really love them. Obviously, if they were to come back, they would probably all need new abilities, but I'd be down for it. I'm always up for more Pikmin, and these are all pretty great in my opinion, even if some of them are kind of redundant in their current form. But what do you think? Do you think any of these guys could be in future games? What other abilities could they have to make them stand out? Let me know in the comments. This is my first real scripted video, hopefully more in the future. buy Pikmin 4 next week. That's the important thing. Buy Pikmin 4, and we won't have to wait another decade for Pikmin 5. Please let this game sell good. Please.